Good afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. We've got a little bit of a reactive show coming up for you within the next half an hour. Late yesterday afternoon, it was reported that Liam Rossini would be leaving Derby County or stepping down as the club's interim manager, and Paul Warne of Rotherham United was the odds-on favourite to take charge at Pride Park, stepping back down into League One, of course. So we're going to be running that by you this afternoon. I'm your host, Alfie Burns, and I'm delighted to be joined by my two colleagues, Ned Holmes and Billy Mulley. Ned, how are you this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm good. Good, thanks, mate. I mean, taken a bit by surprise by this, and I think what we thought was set to be a fairly quiet international break is suddenly turning into something pretty busy. A couple of managers going, and now this news, which I think has taken us all by surprise.
Absolutely, Billy. How are you?
Yeah, just echoing what Ned said. Really crazy speaking on the show yesterday about Cardiff and their managerial situation. Similar kind of thinking here. It's just gone a little bit crazy the last few weeks.
Yeah, it has. We're streaming across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter this afternoon. So any Derby or Rotherham fans joining us want to give their thoughts on the news that Paul Warne is seemingly imminently going to be the new Derby County boss, please do. It'd be great to hear from you and get your thoughts up on the show. Before we come on to Paul Warne, then let's just talk about Liam Rossini. He's been part of the Derby coaching staff for a number of years now, and he picked up the interim role as manager after Wayne Rooney departed Pride Park during the summer. He's overseen the first 9 fixtures of the League One season, picking up 4 wins, 2 draws and 3 defeats, with Derby sitting 7th in the table. It's been a reasonably good start to the season, and Derby were, of course, really busy in the summer with revamping their squad. So a reasonable start, a lot of new players, Ned. Are you slightly surprised that the club are opting to change now?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, after such a busy summer and a summer in which, you know, there were doubts about whether Derby would even be going on as a club, and then obviously rebuilt that squad and has given Rossini a lot to do in terms of sort of pulling that squad together. It's a lot of, fairly big, a lot of sort of free agent signings and fairly big names if you're looking at the likes of McGoldrick and Horahan and players like that brought in from the championships. So not an easy job for Rossini. And if you look at where they are, as you say, I think it's 7th and on 14 points. They seem to be part of that sort of pack just below those top 4 that have broken away. So it's a strange one, because if the Derby management were expecting Rossini to sort of do any better than that, I think they really need to sort of get their head screwed on a bit better, really, because it's given how much has changed, and you look at just how impressive the likes of Plymouth, Sheffield Wednesday, Ipswich Town and Portsmouth have been this season. The fact that they're in the sort of that rung just below is hugely impressive. But in terms of timing, I guess it makes sense due to the international break. It's going to give whoever comes in a bit more time. Derby, obviously, given the number of internationals they've got, don't have a game until the start of October. That's going to give, assuming it is Warne, time to sort of get to know the players and things like that. So I guess kind of makes sense there. And there's been kind of mixed reporting in that some people are sort of saying that this in part came from Rossini, who was happy to sort of step down. It was, and others saying that it was a decision made by the ownership. But I guess timing wise, if the ownership have had a look at him through the opening weeks of the season and they feel like a new direction was needed to help them secure promotion, then I guess the timing in that sense, and with the international break, does make sense ahead of what is set to be the really busy period.
Let's continue talking about Rossini then, Billy. Do you have sympathy with him that his sort of time in charge of Derby, albeit on an interim basis, has only lasted this early part of the season?
Yeah, I feel that he does need to be sympathy applied to this situation. Rossini, as a manager, completely in his infancy. I think under Wayne Rooney, he was credited with a lot of good that Derby were doing. Obviously, come up to the main role now, and starting off, I guess, in a decent enough kind of way. I get looking at Derby, it was always going to be a bit of difficulty. They managed to keep a large part of the squad together, adding a few new faces. It was going to need time for it all to gel together. I think there was glimpses of that coming together. But ultimately, if a manager like Paul Warne is available. I know he's at Rotherham, but if there's any possibility that you could lure him to a League One club, I think it's got to be explored, but I'm sure we'll go onto that in a minute. I don't think this is much to do with Rossini and discrediting the job that he's done at Derby. Of course, he's early into that project that can be continued by another manager. It's a difficult situation because I think Rossini does have a lot to give in the managerial game, but if a manager like Paul Warne is there and potentially available, then I think it'd be silly to ignore.
There's been a little bit of talk about Rossini sort of stepping back into the role that he had previously at the club and remaining under the coaching umbrella at Derby. Ned, do you think that'd be a good decision for the club to make?
I'm not hugely convinced by this one. I mean, if it's, I feel like if it's come from him and he's sort of said he's happy, he preferred to step down into that, first team coach sort of coaching role, then perhaps it could work and it could ease the transition, given we're about to go into that sort of congested period between the start of October and moving forward. That looks a busy period, but I just think if it's going to be strange for him to go from the one calling the shots at the moment to then being in a bit of a reduced role, and is that not going to sort of encroach a little bit on Paul Warne trying to make shape this squad how he wants it, and is Paul Warne not going to want to bring in that coaching staff that's helped him so much at Rotherham and that I believe are on similar contracts and that their contracts are up at the end of the year as well? For me, it's a little bit of a strange one. I can understand Derby wanting to keep hold of Rossini. He seems like a really highly rated coach. And obviously, as Billy said, credited with a lot of the good that was done under Wayne Rooney. But it just feels to me a little bit strange to be wanting to push off in this new direction and yet keep him sort of in that group.
I've had a comment in from S-34. He feels for Rossini, but the away form continues to be a worry. A big part of what we did last season as well, and the away form has been terrible for a while. Warne, a steady appointment. Right, we'll come on to discussing Warne next. So it broke last night that Warne was looking like he was going to be leaving Rotherham after 6 years in charge, and it was quickly reported after that he was in the frame for the Derby County job. Billy, what was your initial reaction to that news?
Yeah, it's always a strange one when you hear of a championship manager doing very well in the division linked with a League One job. But it's hard to dismiss in the fact that Derby are a massive League One club, massive payers since the takeover. I'm sure the direction the club are seemingly going in now, the sort of the vision, there's a real good feeling around the club. Again, you can sort of see why you could be lured into League One. Paul Warne, of course, a master of League One. He's shown that in previous seasons with Rotherham United. We all know Rotherham don't operate with the biggest budget in the Championship. It does limit what you can do and how you prepare for the Championship. But yeah, I guess the initial feeling was one of a little bit of shock, given my feelings towards Warne. I think he's a very, very good Championship manager, and always going back down a division does seem a bit of a downward step. But in total honesty, it's one that does make sense when you look at the big picture. You look at, I guess, the sustainability of Derby now since the takeover. It seems to be a real good feeling around the club, and we've seen as well with Rotherham, we've seen some of their more integral players in the summer go to League One. It's difficult for them to match the finances of the top League One clubs, and we've seen that. So it seems to be another story of that. Warne, I think, at Derby would be fantastic. He's very level-headed. He's tactically very, very intelligent. He'll set the team up very, very well in a defensive mind, but also he's got that ability to make his teams have the firepower that's necessary. We've seen that last year with Rotherham. We've seen that plenty of times with Rotherham. It would be strange to not see Paul Warne associated with Rotherham. I think it's the last 13 years. Ended his playing career there, went on to a coaching role and then onto the managerial position. But it's one that I could see happening. I do think it has legs.
had another comment in from Chris from the Rams Writer podcast talking about the good vibe around Derby with this story. That is potentially because Paul Warne's something of a promotion expert coming out of League One. 3 promotions with Rotherham up into the Championship. We won't talk about the relegations back down into League One. Ned, do you think that that promotion experience is a key factor behind Derby looking to recruit him and ultimately, we're sat here now and looking a bit into the future. Do you think he can repeat that trick at Pride Park?
I mean, you've got to think that record, which is obviously hugely impressive, is the key factor here, really. I mean, as you say, I don't read personally too much into those relegations. I think given the budget that he was operating on, like the fact that he went close and was pretty unfortunate on a number of occasions not to keep them up. I don't see that as a negative, really, for Warne. That they've been phenomenal at sort of bouncing back. What he's so good at is building this squad cohesion, getting players sort of playing above the level that we'd expect from them on paper and the team being more than the sum of its parts, really. So, I mean, can they do it in this first season? I think joining midway through the season is a real test, and there's some teams in that division that look really, really strong this year. It's going to be a tough one for him to do it straight away, and I think it's going to be interesting. This is obviously a sort of bold move, the first bold move we've seen these Derby owners make. It's going to be interesting to see what they're expecting of him in this first season. You'd imagine to make this sort of big move, they're looking long term, but I'm going to be interested to see what their expectations are. But as you say, I mean, no arguing with his promotion record and with what is a fairly strong Derby squad. You'd imagine that, what this Derby squad needs, it's not lacking in quality. It needs someone to sort of pull them together, and that's exactly the sort of manager Paul Warne is. So in that sense, it could really work out. But there is an element of risk to it. I think me and you were talking, Alfie, before the start of this show that while Warne is, I think been one of the most impressive managers in the Championship this season with what he's doing on such a tight budget and a Rotherham side that are absolutely flying. Paul Warne as a manager, we only know within the context of Rotherham United. We only know within the context of someone that's had to sort of build up players and, make these players sort of outperform what we've expected of them. And how is he going to adapt to being at a club with some big stars on big money? It's going to be interesting to see. But you'd certainly imagine they'll be there and thereabouts. But are they going to be able to close the gap on the likes of Ipswich Town for automatic promotion? I'm not sure.
This is a massive story for Derby County if they are going to be appointing Paul Warne as manager, but it's also a huge story for Rotherham United. 6 years of service as manager at Rotherham for Paul Warne, and he's currently got them 8th in the Championship. And for my money, this looks like a Rotherham United side that look best equipped to stay up after so many years of bouncing between the Championship and League One. As it is, it looks like he's leaving Rotherham, Paul Warne. Billy, why do you think now is the time that he's looking for a new challenge?
There's only so many promotions and relegations between Championship and League One you can take, and I think it's probably another opportunity to perhaps do that at another club. I think it'd be naive of us to not mention the wages. I think he's going to see a dramatic wage increase. I don't think that's going to drive it. I think it's the long-term vision of what the new Derby owners have in store, their plans for the club. Obviously, they're at the club with a high potential now that the takeover is complete. But as you say, for Rotherham, it's going to be a complete change. What they do coming in, I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Warne has a say in what happens next. If he's somebody that could recommend what goes next, because I think just seeing from Rotherham fans, he's still very highly regarded, even if he does move on. He's somebody that has brought success to Rotherham. He's somebody that's ensured stability at the club. He's taken them to sort of a new level in terms of performances, in terms of league position as well. So I think that generally, there'll still be a positive feeling about Paul Warne within the Rotherham camp. A little bit of understanding, which again seems a little bit crazy given its Championship to League One. But at the same time, it's this sort of long-term vision that I envisage at Pride Park that will lure him lure him there. As I say, that the wages as well, the wage increase he'd expect to see, the budget he'd have to work with, I imagine, could play a big part. You think Rotherham, even when getting promoted from League One, they're never anywhere near the biggest spenders, and you know that could play a part in Warne trying to mount not just a League One promotion charge, but going into the Championship season, if promotion is achieved, then again they probably have a sizable budget to try and attack the division. And if you look at Sunderland, they're an obvious example that you can get promoted from League One and thrive. But even Rotherham have proven that early doors.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of Rotherham fans last night with nothing but well wishes for Paul Warne if he is to leave the club. He's given a lot of service to the Millers over the years, but it doesn't hide from the fact that it is quite gutting for Rotherham, as this comment shows. Gutted that Warne is leaving us, but I still wish him the best of luck, as he deserves all the success he will achieve. The timing of this is awful. Ned, how much sympathy have you got for Rotherham as a club, the fact that they look like they're about to lose Warne?
Yeah, a huge amount of sympathy. I think, you know, as much as he deserves a huge amount of credit, Rotherham, the club chiefs, deserve a lot of credit as well for sort of sticking with him time after time and sticking with the project, letting him bring them back over and over again to the Championship, and not being that sort of knee-jerk reaction owners that we've seen, you know, other clubs be after relegations. I think it's a really, really gutting blow, this sort of timing. I mean, this really, as we've said, looked like the season in which they could really sort of break that poor run of going straight up and coming straight back down, and it now leaves them, as much as I agree, and it's huge credit to the Rotherham fans that they just want, you know, they feel Warne leaves with a lot of credit and they want the best for him in the future. But you do worry for them because, you know, as we've said, it's hard to imagine Paul Warne without the context of Rotherham, but it's hard to imagine Rotherham United in the Championship without the context of Paul Warne as their manager, really. And it's really hard to see how they turn next, given, as we've talked about here, that they're not a club with a huge budget. I mean, obviously the strong start of the season will make them more appealing, but could one of Warne's deputies stay? It's hard, you know, to see whether they might get the chance, but equally he'll want to take them to Derby with him, and that will likely be, as we've said, on a bit more money and an exciting project. Could they turn to you know, a safe pair of hands in the Championship, one of those more experienced managers? I'm not sure. It's really, more than anything, I think, just gutting timing for Rotherham. They've had such an exciting start to the season, and having been one of those sides that's tipped by so many to go down, they've really been the surprise package, and it's just really heartbreaking timing for them and their fans.
Let's look to wrap things up then and put a little bit of a conclusion on this story. We'll go back to Rossini then. Billy, I'll put this question to you. Do you think that Derby are making the right call replacing him after only 9 fixtures?
Yeah, well, it's difficult. I don't think form or direction is enough to suggest that he should be replaced, but I think it's the Warne factor that comes in here. If he is potentially available and positive conversations are taking place, then I think he has to be considered, not because of the job Rossini is doing. Of course, he's on an interim contract. It's likely to change given the situation, whether he gets a full-time contract or someone like Warne comes in. It's a very, very difficult call, and I think that's why there's not so many too conclusive opinions on it, because it's a situation that, you know, you can't really blame the owners for thinking it, but at the same time, it does feel slightly harsh. It's a difficult one to fully assess, but if Warne is lined up and readily available to come in, then I think it is the right move.
I think all three of us will be in agreement that Warne going into Derby is going to be a good appointment given what he's achieved in League One. So I'll sort of stage your question slightly differently here, Ned, and sort of say, is Paul Warne making the right decision, leaving Rotherham 8th in the Championship for Derby in League One?
I think for me personally, perhaps the romantic in me, I would have loved to see him stay and give it, you know, give this season a real go at keeping Rotherham up. I think he'd sort of earned that opportunity and to have a real go with a squad that now looks to be in the best place to stay up than any Rotherham squad we've seen. But I can totally understand why he's making the move. As Billy said, it's an exciting project. Derby County are a big EFL club, and the possibility to lead them back to the Championship and who knows where beyond is got to be really exciting. So you can understand that, and actually we've heard sort of murmurs from Paul Warne and elsewhere at the end of last season and before that he was perhaps not starting to get frustrated, but that there was the part of him that was keen to move. So perhaps with all those things slotting in together, that this is just the right time and the right offer for him. But for me personally, and I'm sure for Rotherham fans, I would have loved to see him give it one more go with the Millers.
That concludes our look at what's going on at Derby County then, with it seemingly looking like Liam Rossini is out and Paul Warne is coming in. There'll be further details regarding that and when it's confirmed, if it is going to be confirmed, over on the website, footballleagueworld.co.uk. So make sure you check out the website and look for all the news and reaction regarding this appointment over there. Coming up later today on the channel, we're going to be looking at Portsmouth and whether they are set for promotion in League One this season under Danny Cowley. I'm sure any Derby County fans still with us will be interested in that show, given that they will be gunning for promotion if Paul Warne is in the dugout at Pride Park for the remainder of the season. So make sure you tune in for that. But between now and then, take care.